Chapter 1. The blood in the snow. Snow fell like ash over the mountain pass, silent and relentless, burying the world in white. Ilara Thorne stumbled through it, her breath coming in ragged gasps that burned her lungs. Her bare feet left crimson, prints behind her small, desperate tracks that would freeze before dawn. She should have died hours ago, should have let the cold take her. When she collapsed the first time, when her legs gave out and the world tilted sideways into white, nothing, but something kept pulling her forward. Not hope. She had no hope left. Just the animal refusal to die. On her knees. Behind her, the village burned. She didn't look back. Couldn't. The screams had stopped an hour ago, but they still echoed in her skull, high and terrible. Her mother's voice among them. Run, Ilara. Don't stop. Don't let them take you. So she ran. Into the dark. Into the mountains where no roads led and no travelers went. Where the old stories said monsters lived in castles of black stone, and the night belonged to creatures with teeth like knives. Better monsters than men. Her vision blurred. The trees around her twisted into grotesque shapes, skeletal fingers clawing at the sky. She pressed one hand to her side where the wound leaked warmth down her ribs, soaking through her thin dress. The fabric clung to her skin, frozen stiff in places, wet and warm in others. She didn't remember when she'd stopped feeling the cold. The forest opened suddenly into a clearing, and Ilara's legs finally gave out. She pitched forward into the snow, her hands sinking deep. The world spun. She tasted copper and salt. Somewhere above her, the moon hung fat and silver, watching through bare branches. She tried to push herself up, failed. Her arms were trembling too hard, her fingers numb and useless. The snow beneath her cheek felt almost warm now, soft, like feathers. This is it, she thought distantly. This is where I die. The thought didn't frighten her. There was a strange peace in it, a giving up that felt like mercy. She closed her eyes, footsteps crunched in the snow. Ilara's eyes snapped open. She tried to move, to crawl, but her body wouldn't obey. The footsteps came closer, measured, unhurried. Not the frantic scramble of pursuers. Something else. A shadow fell across her. Christ, a man's voice said, low and rough. What are you doing all the way out here? Ilara managed to turn her head. Through the blur of tears and snow, she saw him, tall, dressed in dark wool that seemed to drink the moonlight. His face was sharp-featured, pale as marble, beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. And his eyes, God, his eyes, silver bright and inhuman, catching the light like a wolf's. Stay back, she tried to say, but it came out as a whisper. Blood bubbled at the corner of her mouth. He crouched beside her, moving with an unnatural grace that made her skin prickle. I'm not going to hurt you. His gaze traveled over her, the torn dress, the blood, the bare feet. Something flickered across his face. Anger, maybe, or recognition. Who did this? Men. The words scraped out of her. Soldiers. She coughed, tasted more blood. They burned everything. His jaw tightened. How long ago? Hours. I don't. Her vision swam. I ran, clearly. He reached for her, then stopped, his hand hovering inches from her skin. I need to move you. It's going to hurt. Ilara tried to focus on his face, on those strange silver eyes. Are you? She swallowed. Are you one of them? The monsters? A ghost of a smile touched his mouth, bitter and sad. Yes, good. The world was fading now, darkness creeping in from the edges. Then maybe you can kill them, for what they did. He went very still. What's your name? Ilara. She felt herself slipping, the cold finally winning. Ilara Thorne. Stay with me, Ilara Thorne. His voice seemed to come from very far away. Don't close your eyes. But she was so tired, and the darkness was warm, welcoming. She let it take her. The last thing she felt was arms sliding beneath her, lifting her from the snow like she weighed nothing at all. The last thing she heard was his voice, soft and terrible. You're not dying tonight. I won't allow it. When Ilara woke, she thought she was dead. The ceiling above her was stone, ancient and black, crossed with heavy wooden beams. Firelight danced across it, casting shifting shadows. The air smelled of wood smoke and something else, herbs, maybe. Medicine. She was warm. That was the first shock. Warm, and lying on something soft that cradled her aching body. A bed. She tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her side, sharp enough to steal her breath. Don't. The voice came from across the room. You'll tear the stitches. Ilara turned her head carefully. He was there, the man from the snow, seated in a high-backed chair near the fire. In the firelight, she could see him clearly now. Dark. Hair that fell past his collar. Sharp cheekbones. A mouth carved for cruelty or beauty. She couldn't tell which. He wore a simple shirt and dark trousers, but something about the way he held himself spoke of old wealth, old power. Where am I? Her voice came out hoarse. Somewhere safe. He didn't move, but his eyes still, that eerie silver, tracked her every movement. My home. The castle. The stories rushed back. The house in the mountains. House Corvin, he confirmed. And before you ask, yes, we are what you think we are. Vampires, the night walkers, the blood drinkers. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was commenting on the weather. My name is Lucian. Alara's heart hammered against her ribs. She should be afraid, should be screaming, but the fear wouldn't come, only a strange, distant curiosity. You saved me. I found you dying in my territory. What was I supposed to do? Let me die? Isn't that what monsters do? Something dark moved behind his eyes. I've done plenty of monstrous things, Alara Thorne, but letting children bleed out in the snow isn't one of them. Children. She was 19, not a child, but she didn't argue. Why? Why what? Why save me at all? Why bring me here? Lucian stood, and Alara realized how tall he was, easily over 6 feet. He moved to the window, his back to her. You asked me to kill the men who hurt you. Do you remember? She did. Barely. Yes. Those men were the crest of House Morvain. Do you know what that means? No. He turned to face her, and there was something ancient in his expression, weariness and rage twined together. It means this isn't over. They'll come looking for survivors. And when they find you, he trailed off. You can't go back. Not to your village. Not to any human settlement within 100 miles. The words hit like stones. So I'm a prisoner. No, his voice was firm. You're under my protection. There's a difference. What's the cost? Alara asked quietly. Nothing's free, especially not from monsters. Lucian's smile was sharp as broken glass. Smart girl. He crossed back to her, stopping at the foot of the bed. The cost is simple. You stay here, under my roof, until I decide what to do about Morvain. You follow the rules of this house, and you don't run. And if I do, then you die. Messily. He said it without malice, just fact. The mountains are full of things worse than me. Alara met his eyes, those inhuman, silver eyes, and made her choice. All right, she whispered. I'll stay. Chapter 2. The rules of night. First 3 days passed in a haze of fever and fitful sleep. Alara drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of the crackling fire, the weight of blankets, and occasionally, a cool hand on her forehead. Once, she woke to find Lucian changing the bandages at her side, his touch clinical and impersonal. She'd tried to speak, but he'd pressed something bitter tasting to her lips, medicine. She thought, and sleep dragged her under again. On the 4th morning, she woke clear-headed. The room was silent except for the pop and hiss of the fire. Gray daylight filtered through the narrow windows, revealing stone walls hung with faded tapestries and shelves lined with leather-bound books. The furniture was old, centuries old, probably dark wood carved with intricate patterns that hurt to look at too long. Alara sat up slowly, testing her body. The pain in her side had dulled to a persistent ache. Her feet, wrapped in clean linen, throbbed, but bore her weight when she swung her legs over the edge of the bed. Someone had dressed her in a loose white nightgown that wasn't hers. The thought of Lucian undressing her while she was unconscious sent heat crawling up her neck. She stood, clutching the bedpost for balance, and made her way to the window. The view stole her breath, the castle perched on a cliff face, overlooking a valley buried in snow. Mountains surrounded them on all sides, their peaks lost in low clouds. Below, she could see the dark line of forest she'd stumbled through, and beyond that, nothing. No villages, no roads, just wilderness stretching to the horizon. Isolated, she thought, completely cut off. You shouldn't be out of bed. Alara spun, her vision swimming. Lucian stood in the doorway, a tray in his hands. In daylight, he looked almost human, the sharp angles of his face softened, his eyes more gray than silver. But there was still something off about him. The way he held himself to still. The way he didn't seem to breathe. I was looking, she said, steadying herself, and now you're swaying. He crossed the room and set the tray on a small table near the fire. Sit before you fall. It wasn't a request. Alara lowered herself into the chair he'd occupied before, her legs grateful for the reprieve. The tray held bread, cheese, dried fruit, and a pot of something that smelled like tea. Eat, Lucian said, settling into the chair across from her. You've lost blood. You need to rebuild your strength. Alara stared at the food. Her stomach twisted with hunger, but her hands stayed in her lap. Where are you during the day? Sleeping. Where? His mouth quirked. Somewhere you won't find me. It's safer that way. Safer for who? Both of us. He gestured at the tray. Eat, Alara. I'm not going to poison you after keeping you alive this long. She picked up the bread, tearing off a small piece. It was fresh, still soft in the center. Did you make this? I have staff. Human staff. They know what you are, and they know to leave you alone unless you need something. He leaned back, watching her with that unsettling stillness. They'll bring meals twice a day. Don't ask them questions about the house or about me. They won't answer. Alara chewed slowly, her mind churning. Why keep humans here at all? If you drink blood, because castles don't maintain themselves, His tone was dry. And because some of us prefer the pretense of civilization, do you drink from them? No, the word came sharp, almost offensive. House Corvin doesn't feed from our staff. We have rules, rules. Alara reached for the tea, cradling the warm cup in her hands. Like what? Lucian studied her for a long moment, as if deciding how much to tell her. Feeding requires consent, he said finally. Always, no exceptions. We don't take from children ever. We don't drain anyone to the point of death, unless they've committed a crime worthy of execution by our laws, your laws, vampire laws. They're older than any human kingdom. He crossed his legs, the picture of casual elegance. Every house has rules about territory, feeding rights, blood oaths. Break them, and the consequences are severe. Ilara thought of the soldiers, the burning village. House Morvain broke your rules when they came to my village. Something dark crossed his face. They did more than that. They came into Corvin territory without permission, attacked humans under my protection whether you knew it or not, and they left survivors. His eyes met hers. That's either arrogance or a declaration of war. The tea turned bitter in her mouth. War. Between vampire houses, yes. It's rare, but it happens. Lucian's voice dropped lower. Morvain wants something. Land maybe, resources, or they're testing my strength. He paused. Either way, you're caught in the middle now. Because I saw them. Because I survived. Yes. Alara set down her cup with shaking hands. You said I can't leave. Not yet. Not until I understand Morven's game. Lucian leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I need to know what happened in your village. Everything. What you saw. What they said. The memories rushed back, smoke and screaming, and her mother's face in the firelight. Alara's chest tightened. Why should I tell you anything? Because knowledge is the only weapon you have right now. His voice softened, just slightly. And because if Morvain comes for you, I need to know why they wanted you dead in the first place. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Alara looked at him, really looked, and saw the weariness beneath the cold control, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands gripped the armrests, just a shade too tight. He was worried, actually worried. They came at sunset, she said quietly. Soldiers in black with a red crest, a raven, I think. They went house to house, asking questions. What questions? About strangers. About anyone new to the village in the last month. Alara's throat tightened. My mother tried to hide me. She said they were looking for someone specific. She told me to run to the mountains if anything happened. Lucian went very still. Did she say who they were looking for? A girl, young, dark-haired. Alara's voice cracked. Someone important too. To the old bloodlines. The silence that followed was deafening. Christ, Lucian breathed. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Your mother. What was her name? Mira Thorn. Why? Thorn. He said it like a curse. Of course it is. Do you know anything about your father? He died before I was born. My mother never talked about him. Lucian turned, and there was something new in his expression, recognition, maybe, or dread. Alara, I need you to think very carefully. Did your mother ever tell you anything unusual about your family? About your blood? The question sent ice down her spine. No, we were just villagers, farmers. No one is ever just anything. He crossed back to her, crouching so they were eye level. Morvain doesn't burn villages for sport. They were looking for you specifically, which means you're not what you think you are. Alara's heart hammered. What are you saying? I'm saying that whatever blood runs in your veins, it's valuable enough to kill for. His silver eyes searched hers. And dangerous enough that your mother kept you hidden for 19 years. The room seemed to tilt. Alara gripped the armrests, her knuckles white. That's insane. Is it? Lucian's voice was gentle now, almost kind. Think, Alara, have you ever noticed anything strange about yourself? Anything that didn't quite fit? She wanted to say no, wanted to laugh and tell him he was wrong. But memories stirred the way she'd always healed faster than other children. The way animals watched her differently. The dreams she'd had since childhood, full of old stone halls and voices speaking languages she didn't know. I don't know what I am, she whispered. Then we'll find out together. Lucian stood, offering his hand. But first, you need to learn how to survive in a house full of vampires. Starting with the most important rule. Alara looked at his outstretched hand, pale, long-fingered, steady. She took it. What's the rule? His grip was cool and firm. Never go out at night. Chapter 3. Shadows at the Dorth Castle revealed itself in pieces. Over the following days, Alara learned its rhythms. The hushed mornings when she woke alone, sunlight slanting through ancient windows. The quiet afternoons spent in the library, surrounded by books and languages both familiar and strange. The heavy silence that fell at dusk when the human staff disappeared into their quarters and locked their doors, and then the nights, When the castle came alive with sounds, she tried not to identify footsteps in distant corridors, voices speaking too low to hear, and sometimes, laughter that raised the hair on her arms. Lucian appeared each evening as darkness fell, emerging from whatever shadowed place he spent his daylight hours. He never explained where he went, and Alara learned not to ask. Some boundaries, she was beginning to understand, were meant to protect her. Tonight, he'd brought her to a different room smaller than the library, warmer. A study perhaps, with a desk covered in maps and papers, and walls lined with weapons that gleamed in the firelight. Sit, he said, gesturing to a chair near the hearth. Alara obeyed, tucking her borrowed skirts around her legs. The staff had provided her with clothes, simple dresses in dark colors that fit well enough. She still had no shoes. Something about that bothered her more than it should. Lucian poured 2 glasses of wine, offering her one. She took it, but didn't drink, watching as he settled across from her with that preternatural grace. You're healing well, he observed. The fever's gone. No infection. Your medicine worked. Vampire blood works better. But I assumed you'd object. He said it lightly, but his eyes tracked her reaction. Alara's fingers tightened on the glass. You could have healed me completely? Yes. A few drops would have closed the wound in hours. He took a sip of his wine. But vampire blood comes with complications. It creates a temporary bond. You'd be able to feel me, sense my emotions. Some humans find it unsettling, and you didn't want that. I didn't want to make that choice for you. His gaze held hers. Consent matters, Alara, even in healing. Something in her chest loosened at the words. She'd expected a monster, but Lucian kept surprising her with his careful restraint. Thank you, she said quietly, for respecting that. He inclined his head, accepting the gratitude without comment. Then his expression shifted, growing serious. I need to tell you something. Morvain has been quiet to quiet. My scouts report no movement from their territory, no messengers, no challenges. Isn't that good? No, it's suspicious. He set down his glass, leaning forward. In vampire politics, silence is often more dangerous than threats. It means they're planning something. Fear prickled at the base of Alara's spine. What kind of something? I don't know yet, but I received word today from one of my contacts in the human settlements. They're asking questions again, looking for survivors from your village. The wine turned sour in her mouth. They know I'm alive. They suspect. They don't know where you are, not yet, but they're searching. His jaw tightened. And they've enlisted help, human mercenaries who won't be bound by vampire law. Alara stood abruptly, her skirt swishing. She paced to the window, staring out at the darkness beyond. The mountains were invisible now, swallowed by night. Why? What could they possibly want with me? That's what I'm trying to understand. Lucian's voice came from behind her, closer than she'd expected. She hadn't heard him move. Your mother called you important to the old bloodlines. That phrase means something specific in our world. She turned to face him. He stood barely 3 feet away, tall and still as a statue. What does it mean? There are humans born with ancient blood, descendants of the first families who made pacts with vampire houses centuries ago. They're rare, valuable. His eyes searched hers. Some can be turned without the usual difficulties. Others have abilities, even as humans. Precognition, heightened senses, influence over vampire minds. Alara's laugh came out bitter. I'm none of those things. I'm just ordinary. Lucian's smile was sad. You survived 4 hours in mountain cold that should have killed you in 1. You lost enough blood to die twice over, yet your heart kept beating. And he hesitated. You've been in a castle full of vampires for nearly a week, and you haven't once flinched from me. Should I be flinching? Most humans can't help it. We trigger something primal, a prey response. His head tilted, studying her. But you look at me like I'm just a man, aren't you? No, the word was soft, almost regretful. I haven't been human for 300 years. The confession hung between them. 300 years. Alara tried to comprehend it all that time, all those lives lived and lost while he remained. Do you miss it? Being human? Something flickered across his face, too quick to name. Every day, before she could respond, a sound echoed through the castle, a bell, deep and resonant, ringing 3 times. Lucian's entire demeanor changed. His shoulders tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward the weapons on the wall. Get away from the window. What now, Alara? The command in his voice moved her before thought could. She backed toward the center of the room as Lucian crossed to the door in 3 long strides. He yanked it open, and one of the human staff stood there, a middle-aged woman with iron gray hair and frightened eyes. My lord, she gasped. Riders approaching. 6 of them, bearing Morvain colors. Lucian's curse was creative and multilingual. How close? Half a mile, maybe less. Wake the house. Full defensive positions. No one engages without my order. He turned back to Alara. You need to hide. What? No, this isn't a discussion. He crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. His hands were like ice through the fabric of her dress. If Morvain is here, it's for you. I won't let them take you, but I need you safe while I deal with them. Fear clawed at her throat. What will you do? Find out what they want. And if they came here looking for a fight, his smile was all teeth, sharp and dangerous. Then they'll get one. The transformation was startling. Gone was the careful, restrained man who'd saved her. In his place stood something ancient and deadly, silver eyes blazing with barely controlled violence. There's a passage behind the bookcase in your room, he continued, his voice clipped and efficient. Third shelf from the bottom. Press the red book. It leads to the old crypts. Go there now and don't come out until I come for you myself. Lucian, do you trust me? The question caught her off guard. Did she? This creature who shouldn't exist, who'd shown her more kindness than any human in her life, save her mother? Yes, she heard herself say. Something in his expression softened. Then trust me. Now, go. Footsteps pounded in the corridor outside, more staff, or perhaps other vampires, she couldn't tell. The castle was waking, preparing for war. Alara moved toward the door, then stopped. Don't die. Lucian's laugh was dark and humorous. I'm much harder to kill than you'd think. She fled then, her bare feet silent on the cold stone floors. Behind her, she heard Lucian calling orders, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of command. The castle seemed to respond, coming alive around her like a beast rousing from sleep. She reached her room and went straight to the bookcase, counting shelves with shaking hands. Third from the bottom there. A red leather volume with no title. She pressed it, and the entire bookcase swung inward with a soft click, revealing darkness beyond. Alara grabbed a candle from the mantel and stepped through. The passage was narrow. The walls, rough stone that scraped her shoulders. She followed it down, into the earth beneath the castle. The air grew cold and damp, carrying the scent of old stone and something else, something that reminded her of graveyards. The passage opened into a vast chamber. Crypts, Lucian had said, and he hadn't lied. Stone sarcophagi lined the walls, their surfaces carved with names and dates that blurred in the candlelight. Some were centuries old. Some bore the crest of House Corvin. Alara found a corner and sank down, pulling her knees to her chest. The candle flickered, casting wild shadows. Above, in the castle proper, she heard it begin, raised voices, then crashes, then something that might have been screaming. She pressed her hands over her ears and closed her eyes, praying to gods she wasn't sure existed anymore. Please, she thought, please let him survive this, and wondered when the vampire who'd saved her had become more important than her own safety. Chapter 4. Blood and Bargains. The silence was worse than the noise. Alara didn't know how long she'd been in the crypts, an hour, maybe two. The candle had burned down to a stub, wax pooling on the stone floor beside her. Above, the sounds of conflict had raged, and then suddenly stopped. Now there was nothing. Just the drip of water somewhere in the darkness, and her own ragged breathing. She stood, her legs cramping from being curled too long in one position. The candlelight barely penetrated the gloom, revealing only the nearest sarcophagi with their carved names. Corvin, Corvin, Corvin. Generations of vampires, sleeping their final sleep beneath stone, or perhaps not final. She wasn't sure how vampire death worked. A sound echoed from the passage, footsteps, deliberate and measured. Alara's heart lurched. She looked around frantically for somewhere to hide, but the crypts offered nothing except the sarcophagi themselves, and she couldn't bring herself to. Alara. Lucian's voice, rough and weary. It's safe. You can come out. Relief flooded through her so intensely her knees nearly buckled. She grabbed the candle and hurried toward the passage entrance. Lucian emerged from the darkness, and she almost dropped the light. He was covered in blood. It soaked his shirt, splattered across his face and hands, darkened his hair. For a moment, Alara's mind went blank with horror. Then she realized he was walking, standing. The blood wasn't his. Most of it wasn't his. Oh God, she breathed. Lucian looked down at himself, as if only just noticing. It's not as bad as it looks. You're covered in blood. Yes, well, Morvain didn't come to talk. He moved past her into the crypt, his movements stiff. Now that he was closer, she could see the tear in his shirt where something had sliced across his ribs, and another wound on his shoulder that was slowly knitting itself closed. As she watched, Alara forced herself to look away from the healing flesh. What happened? 6 vampires bearing Morvain's crest. 3 are dead. 2 fled. He lowered himself onto one of the stone sarcophagi with a grimace. 1 is currently chained in my dungeon, waiting for dawn. You have a dungeon? I have many things. His smile was tight with pain. Ancient castles come with certain amenities. Alara set the candle down and moved closer, studying him. The wounds were closing, but slowly, if her limited understanding of vampires was correct. You're hurt worse than you're admitting. I'll heal. When? Because you look like you're about to fall over. Lucien's laugh was short and humorless. In a few hours, I'll be fine. Vampire healing is remarkable, just not instantaneous. He met her eyes. I told you, we're harder to kill than you'd think. What did they want? His expression darkened. You, specifically you. They demanded I hand over the Thorn Girl or face the consequences. He paused. I declined. That's why they attacked. That's why they're dead. There was no regret in his voice, only cold certainty. They came into my house, made demands, and drew weapons. They knew what would happen. Alara sank down beside him, careful not to touch. The one you captured, will he tell you anything? Eventually. Vampires are proud, but pain has a way of loosening tongues. Lucien tilted his head back against the stone, closing his eyes. Although I suspect I already know what he'll say. Morvain wants you for the same reason I'm keeping you your blood. You keep saying that like it means something. Because it does. He opened his eyes, turning to look at her. I've been searching the old records, trying to understand. The name Thorn appears in several treaties between humans and vampires, going back 700 years. Always connected to House Corvin. Always marked as special. The words send a shiver through her. Special how? The records are vague. Deliberately so, I think. But one thing is clear, Thorn blood was valuable enough that my ancestors made oaths to protect it. Blood oaths that apparently still bind, even after all this time. Alara's mind reeled. That's why you saved me. Not because you're kind, but because of some ancient promise. No, the word came sharp. I saved you because you were dying in my territory. The oath just makes it more complicated. He shifted, wincing. But it also means Morvain can't take you without starting a war they probably can't win. I have every legal right to keep you here. Legal? The word tasted bitter. I'm not property. I know. His voice softened. But in vampire law, bloodlines and oaths matter more than individual choice. It's archaic and frustrating, but it's what keeps our houses from descending into chaos. Alara stared at the blood on his hands. Someone else's life ended because of her. 3 vampires are dead because of me. 3 vampires are dead because they chose violence. Lucien reached out, then seemed to think better of it, his hand falling back to his lap. Don't carry that guilt, Alara. They knew the risks, but the guilt was already there, settling in her chest like a stone. Her mother, her village, now this everyone who came near her seemed to die or suffer. Maybe you should just give me to them. Maybe then no, the command in his voice stopped her cold. I won't hear that again. Do you understand? She looked at him, at the fierceness in his silver eyes, and saw something that made her breath catch. Not just duty or honor, something more personal. Why do you care? The question came out barely a whisper. Lucien held her gaze for a long moment. Because in 300 years, I've seen too many innocents sacrificed for politics and power. And because he stopped, jaw tightening. Because you remind me that not everything in this world is corrupt and calculating. You're brave and stubborn and far too trusting, and somehow, against all reason, that matters to me. The confession hung in the air between them, fragile and dangerous. Alara's heart hammered. Lucien, a sound echoed from above a bell again, but different this time. 2 chimes instead of 3. Lucien was on his feet instantly, all pain forgotten. Damn it. What is it? The prisoner. He started toward the passage. He's dead. What? How? Suicide, probably. Poison, or he cursed again. Morvain vampires carry deathbane in hollow teeth. If captured, they bite down and end it before they can be questioned. Alara hurried after him. So we've learned nothing. No, we learned plenty. Lucien's voice was grim as they climbed back through the passage. We learned Morvain is desperate enough to send assassins on a suicide mission. We learned they value your capture over their own people's lives. And we learned they're willing to break every treaty and law to get to you. They emerged into her room, and Lucien went straight to the window, looking out at the darkness. This was just the first wave. They'll send more. Then what do we do? He turned to face her, and in the firelight, covered in drying blood, he looked every inch the ancient predator he was. We prepare for war. I'll call in allies from other houses. Strengthen the wards. Train the staff for siege conditions. His eyes found hers. And you learn to defend yourself. I don't know how to fight. You'll learn. It wasn't a suggestion. Because the next time they come, they won't be sending 6 vampires. They'll send an army. And I need to know you can survive. If he stopped, something vulnerable flickering across his face. If something happens to me, the thought sent ice through her veins. Nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that, neither do you. Alara crossed to him, standing close enough to see the silver flecks in his eyes. You said yourself you're hard to kill. Hard, not impossible. His hand rose, hovering near her face as if he wanted to touch, but didn't dare. Alara, I need you to understand the danger you're in. Morvain won't stop. And there are things in this world, older things. Darker things that might take interest if word spreads about what you are. I still don't know what I am. Then we find out. Together. His hand finally touched her cheek, cool and gentle. But first, we survived the night. Outside, something howled in the mountains, long and mournful, more animal than human but not quite either. Lucien's jaw tightened. They're already regrouping. Calling reinforcements. He dropped his hand and stepped back. Go to bed, Alara. Get what rest you can. Tomorrow, your real education begins. She wanted to argue, to demand answers, to make him promise he'd be safe. But the exhaustion in his face stopped her. He'd fought for her tonight, killed for her, nearly died for her. Thank you, she said quietly, for not giving me up. Lucien's smile was sad and ancient. Thank me when we're both still alive at the end of this. He left, closing the door behind him, and Alara was alone with the dying fire and the memory of his hand against her cheek. Chapter 5. Lessons in survival. Dawn came gray and cold, filtering through Alara's windows like weak tea. She hadn't slept. Every creak of the castle, every whisper of wind, sent her pulse racing. She kept seeing Lucien covered in blood, kept hearing that howl echoing through the mountains. When the knock came at her door, she nearly jumped out of her skin. Miss Thorne? A woman's voice, the same gray-haired servant from the night before. Lord Corvin requests your presence in the training hall. Alara dressed quickly in the simplest dress she could find, dark wool that wouldn't restrict movement. Still no shoes. She was beginning to think that was deliberate. The servant led her through corridors she hadn't seen before, deeper into the castle's western wing. The stone here was older, darker, marked with scars that might have been claw marks or sword strikes. Ancient battles, fought and won before she was born. The training hall was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows. Weapons lined the walls, swords, daggers, staffs, things she couldn't name. The floor was packed earth, stained dark in places she tried not to think about. Lucien stood in the center, dressed in plain black clothing that allowed for movement. He'd cleaned up since last night, no trace of blood remaining. The wounds she'd seen were gone entirely, his skin unmarked and perfect. You heal fast, she said, stepping into the hall. One of the few advantages of this condition. He gestured for her to approach. How are you feeling? Tired, scared. She met his eyes. Angry. Good. Use the anger. He moved to the weapons wall, selecting 2 wooden daggers. Fear will freeze you. Anger will keep you moving. Alara took the dagger he offered, testing its weight. It was heavier than she'd expected, the grip worn smooth by countless hands. I've never held a weapon before. I know. That changes today. He backed away, putting space between them. The first lesson in survival: everything can be a weapon. Your voice, your nails, your teeth. That dagger is just a tool. You are the weapon. She tried to imagine herself as dangerous, as capable of violence. The image wouldn't come. I don't know if I can hurt anyone. You won't have a choice when they come for you again. His voice was gentle but firm. Morvain vampires won't give you the luxury of hesitation. They'll come fast and brutal, and you'll have seconds to react. The truth of it settled in her stomach like lead. Then teach me. For the next hour, Lucien put her through drills that left her gasping and shaking. How to hold the dagger, how to stand, how to move without telegraphing her intentions. He was patient but unrelenting, correcting her grip, her stance, her balance with touches that were always brief and professional. Again, he said for the 100th time, as she stumbled through a blocking sequence, I can't. Her arms trembled with exhaustion. I need to rest. Vampires don't wait for you to be rested. But he lowered his practice dagger. Water, 5 minutes. Then we continue. Alara collapsed against the wall, her legs screaming. A servant appeared with a pitcher and cup, then disappeared just as quickly. She drank greedily, grateful for the cold bite of it. Lucien sat beside her, not even winded. You're doing better than I expected. I'm terrible. You're untrained. There's a difference. He watched her with those unsettling silver eyes. But you learn quickly, and you don't give up. That's more important than skill, is it? Alara set down the cup. Because last night, you won through skill and power, not stubbornness. Last night, I had 300 years of experience and vampiric strength. His expression grew somber. You'll never match me in a straight fight, Alara. That's not the goal. The goal is to buy yourself time. To survive long enough for help to arrive. For you to arrive. Yes, the certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it made her aware of how dependent she was on him. How fragile her safety truly was. What if something happens to you? She asked quietly. What if next time they bring more than 6? Then I've made arrangements. He stood, offering his hand to pull her up. There are other houses allied with Corvin. I've sent word. If I fall, they'll honor the blood oath and protect you. Alara let him pull her to her feet, his grip cool and strong. I don't want other houses. I want. She stopped, heat flooding her cheeks. What do you want? His voice had dropped lower, intimate in the vast space. You, she thought. I want you to stay alive. I want to stop feeling like the ground is crumbling beneath me. I want to understand why your touch feels like coming home. I want to not be helpless, she said instead. Something flickered in his eyes, disappointment, maybe, or understanding. He released her hand and stepped back. Then let's continue. They worked through defensive positions, Lucian demonstrating how to use an attacker's momentum against them. How to target vulnerable points even on a vampire eyes, throat, joints. He moved with fluid grace. Each gesture precise and economical. You're staring, he said, without looking at her. You're beautiful when you fight. The words escaped before she could stop them. Lucian went very still. Then slowly, he turned to face her. Elara, I know. She looked away, embarrassed. I know what you are. I know it's dangerous to think of you as anything but what you are. That's not what I was going to say. He crossed to her in 3 strides, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. I was going to say that you shouldn't look at me like that. Not because you're wrong to, but because I might start believing I deserve it. Her breath caught. Lucian, a door slammed open at the far end of the hall. Another vampire strode in, a woman this time, tall and severe in midnight blue, her black hair pulled back sharply from a face that could have been carved from ice. Lucian, her voice carried across the space. We need to talk, now. The spell between them shattered. Lucian's expression closed off, becoming unreadable. Elara. This is Mira Corvin. My sister. Sister. Elara stared at the woman at the same silver eyes, the same predatory grace. I didn't know you had family. Most vampires don't advertise their weaknesses. Mira's gaze swept over Elara with cool assessment. So this is the girl causing all the trouble. Mira, Lucian said warningly. What? I'm not wrong. She moved closer, circling Elara like a wolf sizing up prey. Small, fragile, human, and yet Morvain is willing to risk open war for her blood. Fascinating. Elara lifted her chin, refusing to show fear. I didn't ask for any of this. No one ever does. Mira stopped in front of her. But here you are, sheltering in our house, eating our food, learning our secrets. What exactly do you offer in return? Mira, enough. Lucian's voice cracked like a whip. She deserves to know what she's cost us already. Mira turned to her brother. 3 of our people died last night defending her. 3 lives against 1 human girl. The other houses are asking questions. They want to know why Corvin is protecting an unknown bloodline, because the Oaths demand it. The Oaths are 700 years old. Most houses don't even remember why they were made. Mira's composure cracked, revealing anger beneath. Word is spreading, Lucian. About the girl. About the Thorn blood. House Draven has already sent inquiries. House Blackthorn is watching. If we're not careful, we'll have more than Morvain at our gates. The words sent ice through Elara's veins. More houses. More vampires. More death because of what she was. Lucian's jaw tightened. Then we move up the timeline. I'll petition the council for formal recognition of the blood oath. The council won't convene for months. Then I'll force their hand. He glanced at Elara. Go to your room. Rest. I need to speak with my sister. Elara wanted to argue, to demand to be part of the discussion about her own fate. But the look on Lucian's face stopped her. This was vampire politics now, and she was out of her depth. She left the training hall, the wooden dagger still clutched in her hand. In the corridor, she pressed her back against the wall and listened. You're getting attached. Mira's voice, sharp with accusation. I'm protecting what's mine to protect. Is that all it is? A pause. She's human, Lucian. She'll die. Maybe not today. Maybe not this year. But she'll die and you'll be left with memories that hurt for centuries. I know what she is. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're looking at her like she's something more than an obligation. Footsteps, pacing. Be careful, brother. Humans break so easily. And you have a habit of holding on to tight. Silence. Then Lucian's voice, so quiet Elara almost missed it. What if I'm tired of letting go? Elara fled before she could hear Mira's response, her heart hammering against her ribs. She made it back to her room and locked the door, sliding down to sit with her back against it. What if I'm tired of letting go? The words echoed in her mind, dangerous and thrilling and terrifying all at once. She pressed her hands to her chest, feeling her heart race beneath her palm. Mortal, human, temporary, everything he wasn't. Chapter 6. The weight of eternity. 3 days passed in uneasy quiet. Elara trained each morning with Lucian, her body growing stronger, her movements more confident. The wooden dagger became an extension of her arm. She learned to read an opponent's stance, to anticipate strikes, to turn defense into offense in the space of a heartbeat. But between them, something had shifted. Lucian maintained careful distance now, his touches during training brief and clinical. When their eyes met, he looked away first. At night, he disappeared into whatever shadows housed him, and Alara was left alone with her thoughts and the memory of his words. What if I'm tired of letting go? Mira appeared occasionally, watching their sessions with cold appraisal. She never spoke to Alara directly, but her presence was a constant reminder you don't belong here. You're a complication, a risk. On the fourth evening, Alara found herself in the library, surrounded by books she couldn't read. The languages were old, the script flowing and strange. She traced her fingers over the pages, frustrated by her own ignorance. That's old Etruscan. Lucian's voice came from the doorway. A treatise on blood magic and binding oaths. Alara closed the book carefully. I was trying to understand. About the Thorn bloodline. About what makes me valuable. He moved into the room, his footsteps silent on the stone floor. Tonight he wore deep burgundy, the color making his pale skin seem even more otherworldly. Find anything useful? I can't read any of it. I could teach you. He settled into the chair across from her. Though it would take years. Years. The word hung between them, weighted with implication. Years she would have. Years he'd seen pass countless times before. Lucian, I need to know the truth. Alara leaned forward. What exactly am I? Why does my blood matter so much? He was quiet for a long moment, his silver eyes distant. The thorn line descends from the first humans who made pacts with vampires. Back when we were fewer, more vulnerable. They offered us shelter, protection, secrecy, and in exchange, we offered them something precious. What? The choice. His voice grew soft. To become what we are. To live forever. But not everyone can survive the turning. Most humans die in the transformation, their bodies rejecting the change. But thorn blood, your blood carries something that makes the process safer, cleaner. Understanding crashed over her. You're saying I could be turned without dying. Not just could be. Would be. He met her eyes. Your bloodline was created for this purpose. To serve as a bridge between human and vampire. To strengthen our houses through bonds that could last centuries. The books around them suddenly felt suffocating, heavy with the weight of ancient bargains made by people long dead. So I'm breeding stock. A resource to be traded and protected. You're more than that. Frustration crept into his voice. The thorns weren't slaves. They were partners, advisors, beloved companions. Some chose immortality and became powerful vampires in their own right. Others chose to remain human and lived under our protection, raising families who carried the gift forward. And my mother? What did she choose? To hide you. Lucian's expression darkened. The bloodline was supposed to have died out 200 years ago. A plague swept through the last thorn holdings. Everyone perished, or so the records claimed. But clearly, someone survived. Someone who knew what your blood meant and chose to hide rather than claim the protection the oaths promised. Alara thought of her mother, quiet, watchful, always insisting they stay in that small village, away from cities and travelers, always teaching her to keep her head down, to be unremarkable. She was protecting me from this, from all of you, or from something worse. Lucian leaned forward. Think about it, Alara. Your mother had every right to come to Corvin, to claim sanctuary. The blood oath would have protected you both, but she chose to hide instead. Why? Maybe she didn't trust vampires, or maybe she knew something about your line that isn't in the official records. His eyes held hers. Something dangerous enough that she'd rather risk poverty and obscurity than let the vampire houses know you existed. The implications made her head spin. What could be that dangerous? I don't know yet, but I'm searching. He stood, moving to the window. The other houses are growing curious. Word has spread that Corvin is harboring a thorn. They're not hostile, not yet, but they're watching, waiting to see what I'll do. What will you do? Lucian's reflection in the dark glass was ghostly insubstantial. I'll keep you safe, whatever it takes, even if it costs you. Alara rose, crossing to stand beside him. Mira said 3 of your people died for me. How many more before you decide I'm not worth it? He turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes stole her breath. That's not a calculation I'm making. Why not? You've lived 300 years. You've seen thousands of humans live and die. What makes me different? I don't know. The confession seemed torn from him. I've been asking myself that since I found you in the snow. You should be just another obligation, another duty to fulfill. But you're not, and I can't. He stopped, jaw clenching. I can't be objective about you, Alara, and that terrifies me. She should step back, should put distance between them. Instead, she moved closer. Why does it terrify you? Because I'm immortal and you're not. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Because I've watched everyone I've ever cared about grow old and die while I stayed the same. Because caring about you means signing up for that pain again, and I swore centuries ago I'd never. Lucian. She reached up, her hand cupping his cold cheek. I'm not asking you for forever. You should be. His hand covered hers, holding it against his face. If I offer you the turning, you could have forever. You could be safe from Morvain, from aging, from death itself. The offer hung between them, tempting and terrible. Alara searched his face, seeing hope and fear warring in those silver eyes. Is that what you want? To turn me? I want you to live. His thumb traced circles on her wrist, just above her pulse. However, that looks. But the selfish part of me, the part that's been alone for too long, wants to keep you. To make you like me so I never have to watch you fade. That's not love, Lucian. That's possession. I know. He released her hand, stepping back. Which is why I haven't offered it before. Why? I'm trying to keep my distance. You deserve the choice, Alara, free of coercion or manipulation. Or he gestured between them. Whatever this is. What if I want this? The words escaped before she could stop them. What if I want whatever we are? Lucian's expression cracked, showing raw vulnerability beneath. Then you're braver than I am. Because I've lived long enough to know that wanting something doesn't mean you should have it. Or maybe, Alara said softly. You've lived so long you've forgotten how to take risks. Before he could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Mira appeared in the doorway, her face grave. Lucian. The scouts have returned. Morvain is mobilizing. They're calling in debts from 3 other houses. The moment shattered like glass. Lucian's entire demeanor shifted, becoming the ancient strategist. How many? 50 vampires, possibly more. And they're not hiding their movements. They want us to know they're coming. A show of force, he cursed softly. They're trying to intimidate us into surrendering Alara, or they're confident they can take the castle by siege. Mira's gaze flicked to Alara. Either way, we have maybe 3 days before they arrive. 4, if we're lucky. Alara's heart hammered. 50 vampires. Can you defend against that? We have 20 in residence, plus the human staff. Lucian's voice was grim. We can hold for a while. The castle has stood for centuries against worse odds. But if they're willing to wait us out, we'll starve. Mira finished bluntly. Humans need food. We need blood. Eventually, something will break. Then we don't let them siege us. Lucian's eyes took on a dangerous glint. We take the fight to them first. That's suicide, Mira protested. No, it's strategy. He turned to Alara. How do you feel about bait? The question sent ice down her spine. What? They want you. We give them a chance to take you under controlled circumstances. We lure out their forward forces, cut off their leadership, and break their formation before the main army arrives. You want to use me as bait in a trap. Alara's voice came out steadier than she felt. To draw them out. I want to give you a chance to fight back. His gaze held hers. You said you were tired of being helpless. This is your chance to choose. Hide behind these walls and pray they hold, or step onto the board and become a player instead of a piece. Mira made a sound of disgust. You're going to get her killed. I'm going to give her agency. Lucian moved to the weapons cabinet, pulling out a real dagger, steel, sharp, deadly. He offered it to Alara. What do you say? Will you trust me? Alara looked at the blade, then at his face. She thought of her mother burning, of the soldiers hunting her, of 3 days until an army arrived at the gates. She thought of Lucian covered in blood, fighting for her life. Of his words. What if I'm tired of letting go? She took the dagger. Tell me the plan. Chapter 7. Into the Jost plan was simple, which made it terrifying. Alara would leave the castle at dusk, traveling the old mountain road on foot as if fleeing. Morven's forward scouts and Lucian assured her they were watching would see her. Follow her. And when they made their move, Lucian's forces would close the trap. Simple. Elegant. Likely to get her killed. You'll have a 10-minute head start, Lucian explained. His finger, tracing a path on the map, spread across his desk. Follow this road down to the ravine. There's an old bridge there, stone, half collapsed. That's where we'll be waiting. Alara studied the map, memorizing the turns. And if they attack before I reach the bridge? They won't. They'll want to take you alive, which means waiting until you're far enough from the castle that I can't reach you. Quickly. His jaw tightened. At least, that's the theory. Comforting. She looked up, finding his eyes. You're sure about this? No, the honesty in his voice cut through her fear. But it's the best option we have. If we can eliminate their scouts, we buy time. Maybe enough to call in reinforcements from our allied houses. Mira stood near the window, arms crossed. And if the trap fails? If they bring more than scouts? Then I get her out. Lucian's tone left no room for argument. Whatever it takes, even if it means revealing the full extent of your power? Mira's eyes narrowed. You know what the council said. Using the old magic breaks the accords. The accords didn't anticipate a war over a bloodline everyone thought extinct. He straightened, his expression hardening. If it comes to it, yes. I'll use everything I have. Alara looked between them, sensing depths she didn't understand. What old magic? Nothing you need to worry about, Lucian said quickly. If she's walking into danger, she deserves to know what cards you're holding. Mira turned to Elara. Our dear brother isn't just any vampire. He's what's called a primus, one of the first turned. The old blood runs pure in his veins, which means he has abilities most modern vampires can only dream of. Mira, she should know, Lucian. She should know that if you fully unleash what you are, every house in the region will feel it. They'll come asking questions we can't answer. Mira's gaze was hard. Is she worth that risk? The silence stretched. Elara held her breath waiting. Yes, Lucian said quietly. She is. Something in Mira's expression softened, just slightly. Then God help us all. She moved toward the door. I'll position the others. We move at dusk. When she'd gone, Elara turned to Lucian. A primus. Why didn't you tell me? Because it doesn't matter. It clearly matters to Mira, to the council, whoever they are. She moved closer. What can you do that other vampires can't? Lucian was silent for a long moment, his eyes distant. Things that would frighten you. Things I swore I'd never use again after I saw what they cost. He focused on her. The old magic is tied to blood, not just drinking it, but commanding it. I can feel every heartbeat within a mile. Can stop them if I choose. Can make blood boil or freeze in the veins. The words painted a horrifying picture. Elara imagined that power turned loose, indiscriminate and terrible. That's why the council forbids it. That's why I forbid myself from using it. He reached out, his fingers, brushing her cheek with infinite gentleness. But for you, I'd break every vow I've made. I need you to understand that. I do. She turned her face into his palm. But I need you to understand something too. I'm choosing this. Not because you're forcing me. Not because I have no options. But because I'm tired of running. Tired of being afraid. Bravery and foolishness look remarkably similar from where I'm standing. Then maybe you need a new perspective. She pulled back, squaring her shoulders. When do we leave? 2 hours. You should eat rest. His hand fell away. And Elara, if something goes wrong, if you see a chance to run, take it. Don't wait for me. Not a chance. I'm serious, so am I. She met his eyes steadily. You said you won't let go. Well, neither will I. So we both survive this, or neither of us does. Understand? Lucian stared at her, something like wonder crossing his features. You're going to be the death of me. You're already dead. His laugh was surprised and genuine. Technically undead. There's a difference. The moment of levity felt precious, fragile. Elara held onto it as she left to prepare. As she changed into dark clothes, the staff provided. As she strapped the steel dagger to her thigh and tried not to think about using it, dusk came too quickly. Lucian met her in the courtyard. Along with Mira and 5 other vampires Elara hadn't seen before. They watched her with curious, calculating eyes, assessing her worth, probably. Deciding if she was worth dying for. Remember the route, Lucian said, his voice carrying to everyone assembled. Stay on the road. Don't deviate. And no matter what you hear behind you, don't look back until you reach the bridge. Elara nodded, her throat tight. The scouts will shadow her from the tree line, Mira added. Once they make their move, we collapse inward. Fast and brutal. No survivors to report back to Morvain. The other vampires murmured agreement. Elara saw hunger in some of their faces, anticipation of violence. It should have frightened her. Instead, it made her feel safer. These were predators, and for once, they were on her side. Lucian walked her to the gate. In the fading light, his features seemed almost human, just a man seeing off someone he cared about. But his eyes betrayed him, silver and ancient and afraid. I'll be right behind you, he said softly. Every step. Even if you can't see me. I know. She wanted to say more. Wanted to tell him that somewhere between the snow and the training hall and his careful distance, she'd started to feel something dangerous. Something that had no place between mortal and immortal. Instead, she touched his hand briefly and walked through the gate. The mountain road stretched before her, winding down through pine forest toward the ravine. Behind her, she heard the gate close with terrible finality. The sound of safety being locked away. Elara started walking. The forest was alive with evening sounds, birds settling, wind through branches, the distant rush of water. But underneath it all, she felt watched. Not just by Lucian and his forces, but by something else. Something patient and hungry. They're here, she thought. Morven's scouts. Watching. Waiting. She forced herself to walk steadily. Not too fast. Not too slow. Just a frightened girl fleeing into the wilderness. Easy prey. The road descended sharply, and she had to focus on her footing. Loose stones shifted beneath her feet. The trees pressed closer, blocking out the last of the daylight. Shadows deepened. A branch snapped behind her. Elara's heart lurched, but she kept walking. Don't look back. Trust the plan. Another sound closer this time. The whisper of movement through underbrush. The ravine appeared ahead, the old stone bridge spanning dark water far below. She could see its crumbling edge, the missing sections patched with rotting wood. The perfect place for an ambush. Alara stepped onto the bridge. The attack came from 3 directions at once. Vampires materialized from the shadows to in front, cutting off the bridge, one behind, blocking retreat. They moved with inhuman speed, their faces pale and hungry. "Hello, little thorn," the nearest one said, his smile showing to many teeth. Lord Morvain sends his regards. Alara's hand went to the dagger at her thigh. "Tell Lord Morvain he can deliver them himself." The vampire laughed. "Spirit. I like that. It'll make breaking you more." He never finished. Lucian dropped from above, landing between Alara and the vampires with enough force to crack the stone bridge. His eyes blazed silver, his fangs bared in a feral snarl. "She's mine," he growled. "And you made a fatal mistake coming into my territory." The other vampires attacked as one. What followed was carnage. Lucian moved like violence incarnate, too fast for Alara's eyes to track, his hands becoming claws that tore through flesh and bone. The first vampire fell in seconds, his chest open, his scream cutting off as Lucian ripped out his throat. The second tried to flee. Mira emerged from the trees, intercepting him with a blade that took his head clean off. The third, the one who'd spoken, lunged for Alara. She moved on instinct, the training taking over. Dodge, sidestep, drive the dagger up under his ribs, angling for the heart. The blade sank in deep, and the vampire's eyes went wide with shock. "Good girl," he wheezed, blood bubbling on his lips. But not good enough. His hand locked around her throat. Then Lucian was there, his hand plunging through the vampire's back to grip his heart. "Wrong," he said coldly. "She's perfect." He crushed the heart to pulp. The vampire crumbled to ash, and Alara collapsed against the bridge railing, gasping. Her hands shook violently, still gripping the blood-slicked dagger. "Alara," Lucian's hands cupped her face, forcing her to look at him. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head mutely. "You did well. You survived." He pulled her against his chest, and she felt him trembling too. "Christ, I thought when he grabbed you I'm okay." Her voice came out hoarse. "Is it over?" "For now." Mira approached, wiping her blade clean. 3 scouts dead. But they'll have others. When these don't report back, an unholy hull split the night, then another. And another. Alara looked up in horror. "That's more than scouts." They knew. Lucian's voice was hollow. "They knew we'd set a trap. This was their counter trap." He released her, his expression going cold and strategic. "Mira, get everyone back to the castle, now." "What about you?" "I'll buy you time." He looked at Alara. "Run. Don't argue, don't hesitate. Just run." Chapter 8. The breaking point. Mira dragged Alara through the forest with inhuman strength, branches whipping past in a blur. Behind them, the sounds of battle erupted, screams, crashes, the wet sound of flesh tearing. And underneath it all, a pulse of power that made Alara's teeth ache. "What is that?" she gasped, stumbling over roots. "Lucian." Mira's voice was tight. "He's using the old magic." The pulse came again, stronger. Alara felt it in her blood, a pull like the tide responding to the moon. Her vision blurred, and suddenly she could sense them heartbeats scattered through the forest. Mira's cold stillness beside her. The human guards ahead at the castle. And further back, a knot of vampiric presences converging on a single point of blazing power. "Lucian, I can feel them," Alara whispered. "How thorn blood." Mira pulled her faster. "You're resonating with his power. It shouldn't be possible unless," she cursed. "He's created a blood bond with you." "When?" "He hasn't. I've never taken his blood." "Then it's deeper than that. Older." Mira's eyes flashed silver in the darkness. "The oath isn't just words, girl. It's written in blood and magic. If Lucian has activated it fully, it means he's claimed you as House Corvin in truth." The implications swirled in Alara's mind, but there was no time to process. They broke through the tree line, and the castle loomed ahead. Stone walls, iron gates, safety. The guards saw them coming and shouted orders. "Get inside," Mira commanded, releasing her. "I'm going back. You'll die maybe, but I won't leave my brother to face an army alone." Mira's expression softened briefly. "He's doing this for you. Don't waste it." She vanished back into the forest before Alara could protest. The guards pulled Alara through the gates, slamming them shut behind her. The courtyard was chaos, staff running, vampires arming themselves, someone shouting orders about defensive positions. Alara stood frozen, her hand pressed to her chest, where she could still feel that pulse of power. "Lucian, Miss Thorne." One of the human staff appeared at her elbow, the gray-haired woman from before. "You need to get to the safe room. Come with me." "No." Alara's voice came out stronger than she felt. "I need to see what's happening." "The tower. Can I see the forest from there?" "My lady, it's not safe now." She used the tone Lucian employed when he expected obedience. To her surprise, it worked. The woman led her up winding stairs to a tower room with windows facing the forest. Elara pressed against the cold glass, straining to see. Torches dotted the tree line now, dozens of them. The Morvain forces no longer hiding, and in the center of it all, a figure wreathed in silver light. Lucian stood alone on the bridge, facing the army. Even from this distance, Elara could see the bodies at his feet, vampires reduced to ash, their remains scattered like snow. But there were so many more coming, and he was just one man, one ancient, powerful, terrifying man who was going to die for her. No, she breathed. No, this isn't right. The power pulsed again, and this time Elara understood what she was feeling. Not just his magic, but his emotions, rage and fear and desperate determination. He was spending himself, burning through centuries of accumulated power to hold back the tide. For you, a voice seemed to whisper in her blood. Always for you. I need to go back. Elara turned from the window. I need to, you need to stay here. Another vampire appeared in the doorway, one of those who'd been at the ravine. Male, dark-haired, his face grim. Lord Corvin's orders. You don't leave the castle. He's dying out there. He's buying us time. Don't make it meaningless. The vampire's eyes held unexpected sympathy. You're new to this world, girl. You don't understand what he is, what he can do. Trust him. But Elara could feel Lucian's power wavering, could sense the exhaustion creeping in. Ancient or not, even he had limits. And when he reached them, another pulse, weaker this time. Elara gasped as pain lanced through her, his pain, echoing through whatever connection bound them. She felt claws raking across ribs, felt the burn of silver poisoning his system, felt his knees threatening to buckle. He's hurt, she said. They're using silver weapons. The vampire's expression darkened. That's forbidden in honorable combat. Does this look honorable? Elara moved toward the door. Either help me get to him or get out of my way. I can't. You swore to protect House Corvin. She met his eyes, channeling every ounce of authority she'd heard in Lucian's voice. I am House Corvin now. So either honor that oath or explain to your lord why you let him die alone. The vampire stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he smiled. You have spine. I'll give you that. He glanced at the staff member. Get a horse. The fastest one. And fetch the emergency kit from the armory. Sir, do it. If we're mad enough to ride into that mess, we do it properly. 10 minutes later. Elara was mounted behind the vampire. His name was Kieran. He'd said, galloping through the gates with a satchel of supplies strapped to her back. The forest rushed past, and she clung to Kieran's coat as he navigated the treacherous path. When we get there, you stay back, he shouted over the wind. Find cover. If Morvain sees you, they'll focus everything on capturing you. What about Lucian? I'll get him out. If he's still conscious. Kieran's jaw tightened. If he's not, we're both dead. They burst onto the bridge, and Elara's heart stopped. Lucian was on his knees, surrounded by ash and bodies. His shirt was torn, revealing deep gashes that leaked black blood. Silver burns marked his arms and throat. 3 vampires circled him like wolves, their weapons gleaming with that toxic metal, and standing behind them, watching with cold satisfaction, was a figure in crimson robes bearing Morven's crest. Lord Corvin, the figure said, his voice carrying. You've made this harder than necessary. Surrender the girl, and we'll grant you a swift death. Lucian raised his head, and his smile was all blood and defiance. Come and take her. The vampires attacked. Kieran was already moving, throwing himself into the fray with a battle cry. Elara slid from the horse, her hands shaking as she pulled medical supplies from the satchel, bandages, salves, and a small vial of dark liquid labeled. In script she couldn't read. Movement to her left, one of the Morvain vampires had broken away, was coming straight for her. Elara fumbled for her dagger, but he was too fast, too close. A blade erupted from his chest. Mira stood behind him, her face splattered with blood and ash. Told you I'd come back, she said to someone beyond Elara. Lucian appeared at Elara's side, nearly collapsing against her. Up close, he looked worse, skin gray, eyes barely focused. Stubborn, he murmured. I told you to stay safe, and I told you we survived together. Elara uncorked the vial. Drink this. Whatever it is, drink it. Elara, that's pure vampire blood. From my own stores. If you give me that, then you'll heal. That's all I care about. She pressed it to his lips. Please. He hesitated, then drank. The effect was immediate. Color returned to his face. The wounds began closing. But his eyes, when they met hers, were filled with something like grief. You don't understand what you've done, he said softly. Before she could ask, the figure in crimson stepped forward. Power radiated from him, old power, not as ancient as Lucian's but close. How touching. The Primus and his pet Thorn. Lord Morvain will be pleased to take you both. Dorian. Lucian's voice was cold. I should have known Morvain would send his lapdog. Careful, Lucian. Your position isn't as strong as you think, Dorian gestured, and more vampires emerged from the forest. Dozens, possibly more. You're wounded, exhausted, and outnumbered. Your sister is formidable, but even she can't hold forever. And your last remaining guard, he nodded to where Kieran was fighting 3 opponents at once, will fall soon. It was true. Even Alara could see it. They were losing. Lucian pulled himself to his feet, putting himself between Alara and Dorian. Then I'll take as many of you with me as I can, or, Dorian's smile was serpentine. You could be reasonable. Give us the girl. In exchange, Morvain will forgive this transgression. Your house survives. Your people live. All it costs is one human who was supposed to belong to us anyway. She doesn't belong to anyone, Lucian snarled. She belongs to whichever house claims her first. That's the law. Dorian's eyes fixed on Alara. The old blood recognizes no allegiance until it's bonded. And since you haven't turned her, haven't sealed the connection, she's fair game. The words hit like stones. Alara looked at Lucian, saw the truth in his face. Is that right? If you'd turned me, they couldn't take me? Yes, but then do it. Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. Turn me, now. Alara. No, it's the only way. She grabbed his hand. You said thorn blood makes the turning safer. You said I'd survive. Survive. Yes, but you don't understand what you're asking. Immortality. Blood hunger. Centuries of existence while everyone you knew dies. His voice cracked. I won't damn you to this just to win a political battle. You're not damning me. I'm choosing. She squeezed his hand. And I'm choosing you. Us. Whatever comes after. Dorian laughed. How romantic. But I'm afraid you're out of time. Lucian moved. One moment he was beside Alara, wounded and wavering. The next, his teeth were in her throat. The world exploded into sensation, pain and pleasure and fire in her veins. She felt his power pouring into her, felt her human blood burning away to make room for something new, something vast and hungry. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, once, twice and stopped. Chapter 9. Awakening. Transformation was fire and ice, death and rebirth. Agony and ecstasy all at once. Alara felt her human self dying, felt every cell screaming in protest as vampire blood rewrote her existence. But underneath the pain was something else, power. Raw, intoxicating, singing through her veins like lightning. She gasped, and the sound came out wrong to sharp to clear. Everything was to clear. She could see the individual threads in Dorian's crimson robes 50 feet away. Could hear the rustle of fabric as he shifted his weight. Could smell the fear rolling off the human staff back at the castle. And Lucian, God, Lucian. She felt him like a second heartbeat, his emotions bleeding into hers. Fear that he'd killed her. Relief that she was standing. Love so vast and ancient it threatened to drown her. Alara. His voice was rough. Look at me. She turned, and the world tilted. He steadied her with hands on her shoulders, his silver eyes searching hers. How do you feel? Everything, she whispered. I feel everything. The hunger will come soon. When it does, don't fight it. Let me guide you through it. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this for you. I know. She covered his hand with hers and froze. Her skin was pale as marble, her veins visible beneath like dark rivers. I'm like you now. Yes. He said it like a confession. You're vampire. House Corvin. Bound to me through blood and turning. His jaw tightened. And according to vampire law, untouchable by any other house. Dorian's voice cut through the moment. A clever move, Lucian. But it changes nothing. We still have superior numbers. You're still wounded. And the girl, excuse me, the fledgling has no idea how to use what she's been given. He was right. Alara could feel the power coiled inside her, but it was wild, uncontrolled. Like trying to hold lightning in her bare hands. Stand down, Dorian. Mira appeared beside them, her blade still drawn. You have no claim here. The law is clear. The law is also clear about unauthorized turnings of protected bloodlines. Dorian's smile was poisonous. You've broken council law, Lucian. They'll strip your house status, exile you, or worse. Let them try. Lucian's voice was cold steel. I've lived 300 years by their rules, but some things matter more than politics. His hand found Alara's, squeezing once. Through their bond, she felt his resolve unshakable, absolute. He'd known the consequences and done it anyway, for her. The knowledge made something crack open in her chest. What happens now? She asked quietly. Now, we defend what's ours. Lucian released her hand, turning to face Dorian. You have 10 seconds to withdraw from Corvin territory. After that, I consider you hostile forces and act accordingly. Bold words for someone barely standing. Dorian gestured, and his vampires moved forward, surrounding them in a loose circle. You're outnumbered 20-1. Accept the inevitable. 20-1. Lucian glanced at Mira, at Kieran fighting nearby. Those aren't bad odds. You're insane, no? I'm Primus. His eyes blazed silver, power crackling around him like static electricity. And you've forgotten what that means. The pulse of power that exploded from him knocked Alara backward. She watched in awe and horror as Lucian's form seemed to blur, to expand, his presence filling the entire bridge. The air itself bent around him, heavy with ancient magic, and then she felt it, his power reaching out, touching every vampire in the Morvain force. Not attacking. Not yet. Just connecting. I can feel all of you, Lucian said, his voice resonating with inhuman harmonics. Every drop of blood in your veins. Every beat of your undead hearts. His hand rose, fingers curling. And with a thought, I can stop them all. Dorian's confidence cracked. You wouldn't. The council forbids. I don't care. Lucian's smile was terrible. You came for what's mine. You threatened my house. You forced my hand with the woman. He stopped, jaw clenching. You made this personal. Now face the consequences. Several Morvain vampires broke, fleeing back toward the forest. Dorian shouted orders, but his voice was lost in the sudden chaos. More fled. Then more, but not all. A dozen remained, and Alara felt their terror harden into desperate courage. They'd committed too fully to retreat. Dorian was shouting something about honor, about standing their ground. Fools, Mira muttered. She moved to stand beside Lucian. Brother, if you do this, there's no going back. The council will, I know. His eyes found Alara's. But I've already crossed that line. Might as well finish the job. Through their bond, Alara felt his intention a second before he acted. Felt him gathering his power, preparing to make good on his threat. To stop the hearts of every enemy vampire on that bridge. No, she thought. This isn't you. You're not a monster. She didn't know if he could hear her thoughts through the bond, but his eyes widened slightly. Their connection flared, and suddenly she could feel everything he was feeling, not just the rage and protective fury, but underneath it, the guilt, the self-loathing, the bone-deep weariness of a man who'd lived too long and killed too many. He didn't want to do this. He just didn't see another choice. Then let me give you one, Alara thought. She didn't understand how she did it. The power was too new, too strange. But she reached through their bond and pulled, drawing on his magic, on the connection between them. The world seemed to slow, and suddenly she could feel what he felt, the invisible threads connecting him to every vampire present, the pulse of their undead blood, the fragile stillness where human hearts used to beat, and she understood. Dorian, she called out, her voice carrying with a natural clarity. Look at me. The vampire in crimson turned, and his eyes widened as he took in her transformation. The girl not anymore. Alara stepped forward, feeling Lucian's power flowing through her, amplifying her presence. I am Alara Thorn Corvin, first of my bloodline in 200 years. Turned under full rights of protection and blood oath, she let power crackle in her voice. And I'm telling you to leave, now, before my sire decides to stop being merciful. You think you can threaten? I'm not threatening. She reached out with that new sense, finding the threads connecting her to the Morvain vampires. I'm giving you the same choice Lucian gave me. Live or die. Your decision. She pulled on the threads, just slightly, and every Morvain vampire gasped as they felt it, the phantom grip on their hearts. The reminder of how easily Lucian could end them. The reminder that now she could too. This is insanity, Dorian breathed. She's hours old. She can't possibly. Thorn blood, Mira said, almost admiring. Told you it was special. Dorian looked between Lucian and Alara, and whatever he saw there made him step back. This isn't over. Morvain will hear of this. The council will hear of this. Good. Lucian moved to stand beside Alara, his hand finding hers. Let them all hear. Let every house know that Corvin is claimed, protected, and willing to go to war to stay that way. Dorian's smile was bitter. You've signed your own death warrant, Primus. Both of you. He raised his hand, and the remaining Morvain vampires retreated, melting back into the forest. The moment they were gone, Lucian's knees buckled. Alara caught him, surprised by her own strength. Lucian, I'm fine. But he wasn't. Through their bond, she felt his exhaustion, centuries of power drained in minutes. Just use more than I should have. We need to get him back to the castle, Mira said, moving to his other side. Before the next wave comes, there won't be a next wave tonight. Kieran approached, bloodied but alive. They're regrouping. But she's right, we need to move before they realize how weak he actually is. Together, they got Lucian onto the horse. He slumped against Alara's back as she took the reins, and she felt every labored breath, every spike of pain through their connection. Stay with me, she thought desperately. Don't you dare leave me now that I'm like you. Never, his voice whispered in her mind, faint but clear. I'll never leave you, promise. The castle gates opened before them, and staff rushed out to help. They carried Lucian to his chambers, rooms Alara had never seen before, all dark wood and stone and books. She refused to leave his side as they laid him on the bed. As Mira checked his wounds, he'll heal, Mira said finally. But it will take days, not hours. He's spent too much. She looked at Alara with something like respect. You saved him, you know. If he'd actually used the death magic, it would have killed him too. The cost is too high, even for a primus. I couldn't let him sacrifice himself. Alara sank into a chair beside the bed, taking Lucian's cold hand. Not for me. He would have. In a heartbeat, Mira moved toward the door. I'll postcards. You should rest too. The first days of turning are difficult. I'm staying here. Mira's smile was slight. Of course you are. She paused at the threshold. Welcome to House Corvin, Alara. Officially, when she was gone, Alara climbed onto the bed beside Lucian, careful not to jostle him. Through their bond, she felt him relax at her presence, some of the pain easing. I heard you, he murmured, without opening his eyes. In my head, you stopped me. You would have regretted it. I know. His hand tightened on hers. Thank you. For what? For being brave enough to choose this. For saving me from myself. He finally opened his eyes, silver meeting her new amber. For not running when you had the chance. Alara leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. Where would I run to? You're in my blood now, literally. His laugh was weak but genuine. Stuck with me forever. Sure you won't regret it? Ask me in a century. Outside, dawn was breaking. Alara felt it instinctively, the pull toward sleep, toward darkness. Her first day as something no longer human. Sleep, Lucian whispered. I'll be here when you wake. And for the first time since her village burned, Alara closed her eyes without fear. Chapter 10. The dawn of 3 months later, Alara stood at the tower window, watching snow fall over the mountains. The view that had once seemed alien now felt like home, the vast wilderness, the ancient stone, the eternal cold that no longer touched her. So much had changed. The hunger had been the hardest part. Those first weeks, she'd been half mad with it. The scent of blood driving her to distraction. Lucian had taught her control with infinite patience, showing her how to feed without killing, how to take only what was freely given. The castle staff had volunteered those who understood what House Corvin was, what it meant to serve vampires who valued consent above convenience. She'd fed from Lucian too, in those early desperate days. His blood was intoxicating, rich with centuries of power. Through it, she'd felt fragments of his memories, battles fought, loves lost, the crushing weight of immortality. She understood him better now, understood the loneliness that had carved itself into his bones over 300 years, and she understood why her arrival had mattered so much. After so long alone, after so many losses, she'd reminded him what it felt like to hope. You're thinking too loudly. Alara turned to find Lucian in the doorway, fully healed now, dressed in dark formal wear. In 3 months, they'd settled into a rhythm, days spent sleeping, evenings training, nights handling the politics that had exploded around them like wildfire. The council's decision came, she said quietly. I know. He crossed to stand beside her. Mira told me, the Council of Houses had deliberated for months about Lucian's actions, the unauthorized turning of a protected bloodline, the use of forbidden magic, the violation of treaties that predated most living vampires. Their judgment had arrived via raven that morning, sealed with wax and weighted with consequences. They're stripping your primus status, Alara said, reducing your territory by half, and demanding you appear before them to answer for breaking the accords. Yes, you don't seem surprised. Lucian's smile was slight. I knew the cost when I made the choice. Titles and territory mean nothing compared to. He stopped, jaw tightening. To what? To you. He said it simply, as if it were obvious. To this, whatever we are now. Through their bond, Alara felt the truth of it, his absolute certainty that he'd made the right choice, even knowing what it cost. You gave up everything for me. Not everything. The things that mattered, I kept. His hand found hers, their fingers interlacing. You're here. Alive, well, undead. Safe. That's what matters. Morvain is still out there. They haven't attacked, but they haven't forgotten either. No, but the other houses are watching now. Word spread about what happened on the bridge, about your power, about our bond. They're curious, cautious. Some are even impressed. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. You've become something unique, Alara. A thorn vampire, the first in centuries. That carries weight. Weight I don't know how to use. You'll learn. He pulled her closer. We have time now. Centuries of it, if we're careful. The thought still made her dizzy. Centuries. She would watch empires rise and fall, would see technologies dreamed into being, would outlive everyone she'd ever known as human. The village she'd fled was ash and memory. Her mother was buried in ground she'd never see again, but Lucian remained, constant, eternal. Do you regret it? She asked softly, turning me, every day. At her stricken look, he cupped her face. I regret that you had to become this to survive, that I couldn't protect you without changing what you are. But do I regret that you're still here, that I can touch you and know you'll be beside me for more than a brief human lifetime? His eyes blazed silver. Never, not for a second. Alara leaned into his touch, feeling his cool skin against hers. They'd been careful with each other these past months, learning the bond, navigating the sudden intensity of emotions that bled between them. They'd kissed. Once, in a moment of victory after she'd successfully completed her first real hunt. The kiss had been brief, electric, terrifying in its intensity. They hadn't repeated it, both too aware of what it could become, how easily desire could overwhelm new vampires. But God, she wanted to. The council wants us in Vienna by the winter solstice, Lucian said, pulling back slightly. 6 weeks. Enough time to prepare our defense. Defense against what? You broke their laws. They have every right to punish you. True, but they also have a problem. His smile turned sharp. You? The other houses are divided. Some want you handed over to them, claim Corvin has no exclusive right. Others want to study you, understand what makes Thorn blood special. A few even want to resurrect the old treaties, find other Thorn descendants, if they exist. I'm the only one. My mother made sure of that. Are you certain? Lucian moved to his desk, pulling out a leather journal. I've been researching. Your mother's family came from the Eastern Territory's old lands, barely mapped. What if she wasn't the only one who survived the plague? What if there are others, hidden like you were? The possibility sent a chill through her. Other Thorns? With the same blood? Maybe. And if there are, Morvain might already be looking for them. He closed the journal, which gives us leverage. The council needs you to navigate this. You're the key to an entire lost bloodline. So I've gone from prey to political asset. You've gone from helpless to powerful. He met her eyes. And that changes everything. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mira entered without waiting for permission, her expression grave. We have visitors. House Draven and House Blackthorn, traveling together. They claim diplomatic immunity and request audience with both of you. Lucian's jaw tightened. How many in their party? 10 vampires. 20 human retainers. Mira's eyes flicked to Alara. And they specifically asked to meet the Thorn Corvin fledgling. Of course they did. Lucian moved to the weapons cabinet, selecting a formal sword. How long until they arrive? They're already here. In the receiving hall. Presumptuous. But he was already moving, fastening the sword at his hip. Alara, stay close. Don't speak unless I signal. And no matter what they offer, no matter how they try to flatter or intimidate, I'm House Corvin, she finished. I know. His smile was proud and fierce. Then let's show them what that means. They descended to the receiving hall together, Mira flanking them. The visiting vampires stood in a loose cluster, beautiful, dangerous, ancient. Alara felt their power like pressure against her skin, felt them assessing her in return. A woman stepped forward, tall, dark-skinned, wearing emerald silk. Lord Corvin, how diminish you look without your Primus title? Lady Draven. Lucian's tone was ice. To what do I owe the pleasure? Curiosity, mostly. Her eyes fixed on Alara. So this is the girl who's caused such upheaval. She looks rather ordinary for someone worth destroying a house over. Careful, Celeste. A man joined her, pale, sharp-featured, radiating cold amusement. House Blackthorn's crest on his chest. Lord Corvin is touchy about his fledgling. Lord Blackthorn. Lucian didn't bother with pleasantries. State your business or leave. I've no patience for games. Very well. Celeste's smile sharpened. We're here to make you an offer. A way out of the mess you've created. I'm listening. The council is divided on how to handle you. Some want you stripped of everything, house, territory, status. Others want to make an example of you for future generations. She circled slowly, predatory. But a few of us see opportunity. You've awakened something the vampire world thought lost. We want to study it, to understand it. You want to study Alara. We want to ensure her power doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Morvain is dangerous, but they're not the only threat. There are old houses older than any current council member who would use Thorn blood for purposes that would horrify even you. her gaze found Elara's. "We're offering protection, legitimacy, a seat at the table instead of a target on your back. In exchange for what?" Elara found herself asking, ignoring Lucien's sharp look. "Your cooperation. Your blood small samples. Nothing harmful. Your assistance in locating any other Thorn descendants." Celeste's smile was almost kind. "And your agreement to remain neutral in the coming conflicts." "No. Pledging exclusively to Corvin. You become a free agent, bound to no single house." The offer hung in the air, tempting and poisonous. Through their bond, Elara felt Lucien's fury at the presumption, at the attempt to separate them, at the threat wrapped in diplomatic language. But she also felt something else, his fear that she might accept. That after 3 months of vampire politics and danger and the weight of immortality, she might choose freedom over staying tied to him. Elara turned to face Celeste fully, drawing herself up to her full height. "I appreciate the offer, Lady Draven. Truly, it's generous and well considered. But I'm exactly where I want to be." She reached for Lucien's hand, feeling his surprise through the bond. "House Corvin gave me life when I was dying, gave me power when I was helpless, gave me purpose when I had none." She met Celeste's eyes steadily. "I'm not leaving. Not for safety. Not for politics. Not for anything." Silence fell across the hall. Then Lucien's hand tightened on hers. And, through their bond, she felt his love crash over her like a wave, vast, ancient, absolute. "I believe," he said softly. "That's your answer, Lady Draven." Celeste studied them both, then smiled slowly. "Well, this will be interesting." She inclined her head. "Until Vienna then. May the council show you mercy." "And if they don't?" Elara asked. "Then perhaps the world will finally see what a Primus Unleashed truly looks like." Celeste's eyes glittered. "I for one am curious." The visiting houses departed, leaving Elara and Lucien alone in the vast hall. "That was reckless," he said finally. "Probably. You could have accepted. Could have walked away from all of this." "I could have." She turned to face him fully. "But you said some things matter more than politics." "You were right. Elara, I love you." The words came out steady, certain. "I've been trying not to say it. Trying to figure out if it's real or just the bond or gratitude," or she shook her head. "But it doesn't matter. However it started, it's real now. And I'm choosing you. Forever, if you'll have me." Lucien stared at her, silver eyes wide with wonder. Then he pulled her close, his lips, finding hers in a kiss that was nothing like the careful, restrained one before. This was need and promise, and 300 years of loneliness finally ending. When they broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "Forever," he whispered. "I'll have you forever." And in the ancient castle, as snow fell outside and eternity stretched before them, Elara finally felt like she'd come home. 6 weeks later, Vienna would await. The council would judge. Houses would scheme. But tonight, in the darkness, they now both called home. They had each other, and for 2 immortals, that was enough.